If you're over 60 and waking up with stiff joints, aching muscles, or unexplained fatigue, the cause might not be age. It could be something most doctors never mention. In fact, 9 out of 10 people over 60 suffer from a hidden internal dysfunction that affects digestion, hormones, and even joint health, and it's connected to a small but powerful organ, the gallbladder. What's more alarming is that symptoms like high cholesterol, hormonal imbalances, dry skin, or persistent digestive issues might all trace back to poor bile flow. And yet this root cause is rarely addressed. Most people believe that removing the gallbladder solves the issue, but nearly 40% continue to suffer from the same problems after surgery. The real danger? Thick, stagnant bile silently wreaks havoc on the body, disrupting metabolism, weakening bones and joints, and overloading the liver with toxins. But there's good news. A combination of simple natural steps can restore bile flow and radically improve overall health and vitality. After the age of 60, many individuals begin to experience a range of seemingly unrelated symptoms: morning stiffness in the joints, recurring headaches, digestive discomfort, high cholesterol, and unexplained fatigue. These signs are often dismissed as natural consequences of aging. However, emerging research and clinical observation point to a surprisingly common but under-discussed factor: the dysfunction of the biliary system, specifically the gallbladder and the flow of bile. Bile is not just a digestive fluid. It plays a crucial role in detoxification, lipid metabolism, hormone regulation, and even joint health. Despite its significance, the gallbladder is often overlooked unless gallstones are detected. More concerning is the fact that many structural abnormalities such as kinks, folds, or dyskinesia, abnormal movement of the gallbladder, are dismissed as benign or incidental findings on ultrasound. In reality, these changes can have far-reaching physiological consequences. When bile flow becomes sluggish or bile itself becomes too thick, a condition known as bile stasis or cholestasis may develop. This condition is frequently subclinical, meaning it does not produce immediate, dramatic symptoms. Instead, it gradually affects multiple systems. Poor bile flow leads to inadequate digestion and absorption of fats and fat-soluble vitamins, which are essential for maintaining cellular membranes, hormone production, and joint lubrication. Consequently, one of the less obvious but highly impactful outcomes of bile dysfunction is musculoskeletal degeneration. Numerous cases have linked poor bile dynamics to issues commonly attributed to other causes: dry, cracked heels, indicating impaired fat absorption; recurring hormonal imbalances due to excess estrogen not being excreted efficiently; persistent skin; conditions like psoriasis, which may be exacerbated by impaired detoxification; and joint disorders, where the synovial fluid becomes deficient in essential fatty compounds, leading to pain, cracking, and stiffness. An important observation is that bile is continuously produced by hepatocytes, the liver cells, regardless of the presence or absence of a gallbladder. However, the gallbladder serves as a reservoir, concentrating bile and releasing it at appropriate times. Without it, or when it is dysfunctional, bile tends to trickle continuously into the intestine, often leading to irritation of the bowel, altered gut flora, and poor digestion. The result is a cascade of health disturbances that might not be immediately recognized as being rooted in bile metabolism. In addition to these symptoms, certain populations, such as those experiencing chronic constipation, individuals with metabolic syndrome, and those showing signs of liver steatosis, fatty liver, are often found to have underlying issues with bile consistency or flow. The thickening of bile, often induced by hormonal treatments, poor hydration, or long-term restrictive diets, creates a physiological bottleneck. This not only affects digestion, but also the body's ability to rid itself of cholesterol, toxins, and inflammatory byproducts. The significance of bile flow extends beyond the digestive system. Bile acids have been shown to influence inflammation, immune responses, and microbial balance in the gut. Their interaction with receptors throughout the body suggests that they play a systemic role in health and disease regulation. Therefore, maintaining proper bile viscosity and flow is not just a matter of preventing gallstones, but a foundational requirement for metabolic, hormonal, and musculoskeletal health. The implications of poor bile health are often underappreciated in standard medical diagnostics, yet correcting these imbalances can lead to profound improvements in energy, skin clarity, joint flexibility, and hormonal stability. This growing awareness marks a shift in how preventative health can be approached, placing bile health at the center of systemic wellness strategies. A widespread misconception in the general population is that the gallbladder is a dispensable organ and that its removal or dysfunction has no serious consequences. This belief is often reinforced by the notion that as long as there are no gallstones or acute pain, the gallbladder and bile system require no attention. However, this perspective overlooks the complex and critical functions that bile performs in maintaining systemic balance and how easily they are disrupted by subtle errors in lifestyle and diet. One of the most common errors is the assumption that taking supplemental fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin D, E, or K will automatically improve deficiencies. In reality, without adequate bile production and proper bile flow, these vitamins cannot be absorbed efficiently. Individuals may take high doses of supplements and still show no change in blood levels or clinical symptoms, simply because the digestive system is unable to emulsify and assimilate the nutrients due to bile insufficiency. Another prevalent mistake is the misinterpretation of ultrasound findings. When imaging reports indicate conditions like gallbladder bends, sludge, or hypomotility, they are often not addressed with any clinical significance. Yet these findings suggest functional compromise, where bile becomes too thick or does not flow properly. This state of biliary stasis contributes to the formation of gallbladder sludge, microlithiasis, and ultimately stones. Even more subtly, it fosters systemic inflammation due to impaired clearance of metabolic waste and toxins. It is also widely misunderstood that gallbladder issues are purely digestive in nature. Many people are unaware that symptoms such as persistent joint pain, hormonal acne, migraine headaches, and chronic fatigue may stem from impaired bile flow. These symptoms occur because bile is instrumental in eliminating estrogen metabolites, excess cholesterol, and inflammatory compounds. When bile is not flowing effectively, these substances can accumulate in the body, disrupting homeostasis and manifesting as chronic symptoms. Furthermore, dietary patterns that restrict fat intake severely, such as extreme calorie restriction or prolonged fasting, can impair bile production. The liver reduces bile synthesis when it anticipates that fat digestion is unnecessary. Over time, this results in a feedback loop where insufficient bile limits fat absorption, and the reduced presence of fat in the diet diminishes the stimulus for bile release. The end result is a sluggish, thickened bile prone to forming sediment and compromising digestive efficacy. Over-reliance on certain medications, particularly hormone replacement therapies, calcium supplements, and oral contraceptives, has also been shown to alter bile composition. These agents can increase bile viscosity and reduce its flow, leading to stasis and increased risk of gallbladder pathology. Moreover, such imbalances in bile composition are rarely diagnosed until complications arise, further perpetuating the cycle of mismanagement and underdiagnosis. Finally, there is a pervasive myth that the removal of the gallbladder resolves all related issues. However, studies have demonstrated that nearly 40% of individuals continue to experience biliary symptoms even after cholecystectomy. This occurs because the underlying problem of bile viscosity and dysregulated flow remains unaddressed. The continuous leakage of unconcentrated bile into the intestine often leads to diarrhea, dysbiosis, and further impairment in nutrient absorption. These conditions demonstrate that gallbladder removal is not a cure, but a shift in symptom expression. The cumulative effect of these misconceptions and oversights is a population that continues to suffer from preventable and reversible health conditions. A deeper understanding of bile physiology and a shift in perception toward preserving and supporting bile function are critical steps toward improving overall health outcomes, particularly in aging populations. To support optimal bile flow and overall biliary health, a number of dietary and lifestyle strategies can be employed. These interventions focus on stimulating natural bile production, improving its consistency, and promoting coordinated release from the gallbladder. Incorporating such measures into daily routines not only supports digestive function, but also contributes to systemic detoxification, hormonal balance, and musculoskeletal health. One of the most accessible and immediately effective strategies is the intake of warm water upon waking. Drinking 1 to 2 glasses of comfortably hot water on an empty stomach initiates a mild gastrocolic reflex, encouraging peristalsis and prompting the biliary system to begin its daily function. This simple habit can help mobilize stagnant bile that may have accumulated overnight, particularly in individuals with reduced physical activity or irregular eating patterns. Physical movement also plays a critical role in maintaining healthy bile dynamics. Certain yoga postures and gentle core exercises can mechanically stimulate the liver and gallbladder regions, promoting bile flow. For instance, movements such as forward bends, spinal twists, and the cat-cow stretch engage the abdominal muscles and create pressure changes that facilitate the movement of bile through the ducts. These exercises are especially beneficial in the morning, following hydration, to enhance the body's natural cleansing processes. Dietary modifications are equally essential. Regular balanced meals that include healthy fats are crucial for stimulating bile secretion. Fats act as a signal for the gallbladder to contract and release bile into the small intestine. Consuming meals that lack adequate fats can weaken this reflex over time, leading to bile stagnation. Healthy fat sources such as avocados, nuts, seeds, olive oil, and fatty fish provide the necessary stimulus for bile flow, while contributing valuable nutrients for cell membrane stability and anti-inflammatory function. The avoidance of simple sugars and highly processed carbohydrates is also important, as these can lead to insulin resistance and fatty liver disease, both of which impair bile production and flow. A diet rich in whole foods, fiber, and plant-based nutrients supports liver function and enhances the synthesis of bile acids. Particular emphasis should be placed on cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and kale, which contain compounds that assist in liver detoxification and hormone metabolism. Hydration must be maintained consistently throughout the day to prevent bile from becoming too concentrated. While excessive water intake is not necessary, regular consumption of clean, filtered water supports all detoxification pathways, including the biliary system. Dehydration is a common but often overlooked contributor to bile thickening and gallstone formation. Stress management is another key component. Chronic stress activates the sympathetic nervous system, which reduces digestive secretions and impairs gallbladder motility. Techniques such as deep breathing, meditation, listening to calming music, or engaging in relaxing hobbies can help shift the body into a parasympathetic or rest and digest state. In this state, bile production and flow are naturally enhanced. For those with documented issues such as sludge, microlithiasis, or dyskinesia, specific supportive compounds may be used to assist in bile thinning and flow. These include amino acids like taurine and glycine, which help conjugate bile acids, and phospholipids like lecithin, which enhance bile fluidity. Together, these compounds work synergistically to maintain bile in a healthy, less viscous state. Implementing these foundational practices creates a favorable internal environment that supports bile health and, by extension, systemic function. Even without pharmaceutical interventions, meaningful progress can be made through consistent dietary and lifestyle changes that align with the body's natural rhythms and biochemical needs. While dietary and lifestyle measures form the foundation of biliary health, attention must also be given to common substances and behaviors that can undermine these efforts. Certain over-the-counter medications, supplements, and habitual patterns can interfere with bile flow and composition, exacerbating existing conditions or creating new ones. Identifying and minimizing exposure to these factors is critical in preventing bile stasis and its systemic consequences. Nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NSAIDs, such as ibuprofen and diclofenac, are commonly used for pain relief, including joint and muscular discomfort. However, these medications can have hepatotoxic effects when used chronically, leading to altered liver enzyme activity and impaired bile production. Additionally, NSAIDs can compromise the integrity of the gastrointestinal mucosa, which in turn affects bile reabsorption and enterohepatic circulation. Long-term use without medical oversight may contribute to subclinical liver stress and bile stagnation. Certain supplements that are often perceived as beneficial may also pose risk to biliary health when misused. High doses of calcium, frequently taken for bone health, can contribute to bile thickening, especially when not balanced with adequate magnesium and vitamin K2. Multivitamins containing fat-soluble vitamins in oil-based formulations may remain underabsorbed in individuals with bile insufficiency, leading to gastrointestinal discomfort and nutrient imbalances. More importantly, these unabsorbed compounds can exert osmotic effects and alter gut flora, compounding digestive disturbances. Hormonal medications, including estrogen-based therapies and oral contraceptives, have been documented to alter the lipid profile of bile, increasing its cholesterol saturation index. This change favors the formation of cholesterol crystals and sludge, particularly in women during perimenopausal and postmenopausal stages. These effects are often overlooked in standard assessments, as symptoms may develop gradually and mimic other hormonal or digestive disorders. Another overlooked factor is the impact of prolonged fasting and restrictive dieting on bile health. Extended periods without food intake reduce the stimulus for bile release, promoting bile stagnation and increasing its viscosity. Intermittent fasting protocols, if not carefully structured, can thus inadvertently contribute to gallbladder dysfunction, particularly in individuals with low physical activity or pre-existing metabolic conditions. To counterbalance these effects, even minimal caloric intakes such as a few bites of fat-containing food in the morning can initiate bile flow. Psychological stress and sleep disturbances are frequently underestimated contributors to bile dysfunction. Stress induces the release of cortisol and catecholamines, hormones that divert energy away from digestion and toward immediate survival functions. This autonomic shift reduces bile secretion and delays gastric emptying, creating conditions ripe for bile thickening and stasis. Moreover, poor sleep impairs the circadian regulation of liver enzyme activity, further compromising bile production and flow. Environmental toxins, including heavy metals, pesticides, and synthetic additives in food and personal care products, can accumulate in the liver and biliary system. The liver relies on bile to excrete these compounds, but when bile flow is compromised, toxins may recirculate and amplify oxidative stress and inflammation. Reducing exposure to these substances while supporting bile flow through diet and supplementation can enhance the body's natural detoxification capabilities. In summary, while the promotion of bile health through supportive practices is essential, equal attention must be given to identifying and eliminating factors that impair bile dynamics. A comprehensive approach that includes both protective and corrective strategies is required to restore optimal bile function and prevent the downstream effects on metabolic, digestive, and joint health.